you're a horror fan and you haven't seen the film, chances are you've at least heard of it. The Thing from Another World would be reimagined in 1982 when John Carpenter directed The Thing. Now regarded as one of the best horror and science fiction films of all time, The Thing wouldn't have existed without The Thing from Another World. Even to this day, Carpenter believes that his film is not as good as its predecessor. I'd have to disagree with him there, but The Thing from Another World does have an important legacy in science fiction and horror films. If not for this film's success, science fiction wouldn't have as big a place in the film and greater entertainment industry. The Thing from Another World helped to solidify the genre in Hollywood, and its impact continues to this day. Hello, I'm Ainsley, and this is the Quiet Riot, where we talk film, television, and media with an emphasis on old movies, mysteries, and nostalgic favorites. It is spooky season right now, so we're focusing on science fiction, horror films, thrillers, and anything adjacent to that. My first two films for spooky season will be linked in the description box below. I'd love for you to check them out. And today we're doing a double feature with The Thing from Another World and its remake / reimagining, The Thing. Based on the 1938 novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr., The Thing from Another World follows the United States Air Force along with a reporter who finds a flying saucer frozen in Antarctica. When they use explosives to try to remove it from the ice, the flying saucer goes up in flames, and the only thing they're able to salvage is a humanoid-like creature frozen in ice. They take it back to their base, and unfortunately the ice melts, putting the United States Air Force and others there at the base in danger. If you come from John Carpenter's The Thing and expect a similar project, you'd probably be disappointed. The film is well made on a relatively low budget where they utilize a lot of what they had at their disposal, and of course we're talking the early 50s here, and John Carpenter is in the early 80s, and there was a big change in what they had access to. But the overall tone and atmosphere of this film differs from its remake as well. Where the remake, The Thing, is a lot darker and there's a lot more paranoia involved and a lot more isolation, The Thing from Another World does not have that same feeling of paranoia and isolation. Instead, with the number of characters that exist, both the ones that we get to know and the ones that are kind of in the background, things just don't seem quite as isolated as they did in The Thing, which utilizes a much smaller cast. There are also women there, and the dynamic changes due to this, though there's only one main female character and I think one other that we kind of see in the background at one point, but it still changes things up a bit, and the gender dynamic of being all male in The Thing from 1982 definitely creates a very different dynamic that exists in The Thing from Another World. Made in the early 1950s, there are things about the movie that ring true to the period. By the 70s, many films got rid of the false starts and warranted less time to set up the situation. In The Thing from Another World, there are at least two scenes that come prior to going to Antarctica and finding the flying saucer. Today, it would be better to utilize that time elsewhere and instead start in Antarctica with them discovering the flying saucer. Now, in The Thing, they discover everything pretty early on. Of course, we have the dogs coming in and the people in the helicopter that are basically telling them to not let them in. Pretty much spoiling it for Norwegians, but what you gonna do? And so that starts like right off the bat. And in this time, Not always, but I find that those kind of false starts were a lot more typical, or by the time the other film was made, they started with the action a lot sooner. Films in the 50s often utilized some sort of romance, usually at the behest of studios, where the thing has a group of men confined to a single space. The Thing from Another World opens things up a bit. There's more space, more people, and women. A lot of what made the thing what it is not present in the Thing from Another World. And obviously there's a lot more rooms that exist in the thing. It's not just really a single space, but everything feels a lot more cramped, whereas everything is opened up quite a bit more, and that has a lot to do with both direction and cinematography and just the different ways in which they wanted to utilize their surroundings. The Thing from Another World may have been a short, low-budget feature, but its subject matter went far beyond an invasion. With the scientist on one side and the man in charge of the Air Force on the other, there is a tension within the group. The doctor wishes for advancement and believes that putting the crew in danger is worth the knowledge that they will have if this creature is alive and well. We've witnessed our fair share of rich people putting themselves and others at risk in order to gain some kind of insight or knowledge from the past or for the future. Safety is the least of their concerns, and it shows. This is something that is very present in The Thing from Another World. The critical response for A Thing for Another World that was released on April 1951, it became the year's 46th top earner, and it made it the most successful science fiction film of that year. Bosley Crowther in New York Times observed, "Taking a fantastic notion, or is it really, Mr. Hawks has developed a movie that is generous with thrills and chills. Adults and children can have a lot of old-fashioned movie fun at The Thing, but parents should understand their children and think twice before letting them see a film if their emotions are not properly conditioned." Jean in Variety complained that the film lacks genuine entertainment values. And I have to say that John Carpenter probably does not feel too happy about that review if he was to read it, or I'm sure he has read at least some of these bad reviews at a time, but he definitely loves that film, still thinks that his is nowhere near compared to that. And as I said, I would disagree, and I'm sure there is a lot of other horror films that would as well, but it's just weird to think that it lacks any genuine entertainment values. More than 20 years after its theoretical release, science fiction editor and publisher Lester Del Rey compared the film unfavorably to the source material, calling it just another monster epic, totally lacking in the force and tension of the original story. Isaac Asimov thought it to be one of the worst movies he had ever seen. Author of Who Goes There, John W. Campbell Jr., acknowledged that an adaptation would have to change elements from the original, which he considered too scary for most audience members. He hoped that the film would at least get more people interested in science fiction, and many of the films from the 1950s actually did get more people interested. It also showed people like Rod Serling, who was best known for his work on The Twilight Zone, that science fiction is a great way to tell the stories that you want to tell and essentially show your criticisms for what's going on outside in the real world. Since the film's release, some critics have mentioned the film's possible commentary on the threat of communism in America during the Cold War. In his review of John Carpenter's The Thing, film critic Roger Ebert stated, "The two 1950s versions, The Thing from Another World and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, were seen at the time as fables based on McCarthyism. Communists, like victims of The Thing, looked, sounded, and acted like your best friend, but they were infected with a deadly secret." Film critic Nick Schlager also wrote on the film's themes, stating, "An early remark by one military official concerning the burgeoning Soviet presence in the North Pole reinforces The Thing's allegorical status as communist's other. One can deduce that Hendry fears the creature not only because it's emotionless and sexless, but also godless." This film may not be as well known as John Carpenter's The Thing from Another World, like The Day the Earth Stood Still, also released that year, showed studios and independent filmmakers that science fiction was a good way to not only tell stories, but also to make some money. Most were low budget, so they were able to save a decent amount while still getting people to the theater. John Carpenter utilizes the cramped spaces and isolation to evoke paranoia in The Thing. Director Christian Neebe utilizes the larger and opposing groups to create a divide between its characters. Horror and science fiction often utilizes the fears of modern audiences. In the 1950s, there was more fear of the other, the outsider, while in the 80s, the fear was closer to home. Looking at both films from a modern lens, I definitely see John Carpenter's The Thing as being something that modern audiences can relate to far more than they could the 1951 version. The Thing from Another World utilizes the fear of the other, and while that something is still present in The Thing, it is more so the look that these people are among us. And the truth is, there's a lot more connection there than we ever give credit for. There are gonna be people who always fear the other, the outsider, the thing they cannot understand. It happens in all different forms of prejudice. And today, and much like what happens in The Thing, we also fear the person next to us. And this can be seen in politics, and for those of us who may be deemed other based on gender, sex, race, what have you, we feel the fear of the people who look in on us as something to be afraid of. There's something we can all take away from both of these movies and the science fiction and horror genres itself. It's how fear can be a response, a good response, but it can also add to paranoia and other problems that can oftentimes lead to our own destruction. We see this in everyday life when we watch the news, we read the news, and we scroll through the internet. Humans are often involved in their own destruction through their inability to recognize when something is happening or to simply just ignore it. That is not possible. And we can also see by certain wealthy people that this so-called thirst for knowledge is not worth people's lives, even if they think it is. Thank you so much for taking the time with me to sit and watch or listen to this video. I really do appreciate it, and I hope that you enjoyed it and you have some of your own thoughts on one or both of these movies. Please let me know in the comments below. I will be releasing a few of these double feature ones. I have some more coming out soon, and I've really been just into a lot of the B movies that were coming out in the 50s and 60s lately, so I will be doing a lot of those and probably some from the 70s as well. I've just been kind of scrounging the internet for them all. So if you have any suggestions or things you would like to see on this channel this month or in the future, please let me know in the comments below. Always feel free to comment on a community post. You can find me on my socials and on my website in the description box below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!